is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
In the headlines, Iran's foreign minister is categorically rejecting reports of back-channel diplomacy with Washington, asserting that Iran will not accept a ceasefire until its enemies are, in the words, permanently deterred. In a pointed reversal of the narrative, Iranian officials are now claiming it is the United States that is begging to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, not the other way around. Israel has now opened a ground front in Lebanon. The Israel Defense Forces officially expanding their forward defense area into southern Lebanon, marking the start of ground operations to neutralize Hezbollah threats along border. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Seoul this week, rallying against any potential South Korean participation in a U.S.-led mission to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Demonstrators condemned the possibility of military involvement as what they called an imperialist and colonial war of aggression. Moscow is striking back after Ukraine imposed sanctions on 10 Russian Paralympic athletes. The Kremlin calling move yet another example of what it describes as Kiev's increasingly inexplicable decisions. In the Philippines, a group of former soldiers known as the Brave 18 is laying out in stark detail how billions of pesos were allegedly funneled to politicians through cash delivery system using suitcases, vans, even congressional helipad. The Department of Foreign Affairs is firmly asserting the Philippines' long-standing sovereignty over Bajo de Masinloc and the Kalayaan Island Group, pushing back against a statement from the Chinese embassy in Manila that questioned the country's territorial position. Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson Jay Tariela also weighing in as the exchange of statements between Manila and Beijing continues to escalate in tone. History at the Oscars. The song Golden from the film K-pop Demon Hunters won Best Original Song Sunday night, becoming the first K-pop track ever to receive the honor at the Academy Awards. The moment, however, was marked by an awkward send-off on stage as the show's music began playing while the composers were still mid-speech cutting their remarks short. And in football, Kylian Mbappe is back for Real Madrid ahead of their Champions League second leg against Manchester City. The French forward returning from injury just in time, though Madrid will be without Jude Bellingham, who is ruled out of the match. I'm Franco Baranda. Newsline World starts now. Iran's foreign minister has categorically rejected reports of back-channel diplomacy with Washington, asserting that Iran will not accept a ceasefire until its enemies are permanently deterred. MJ Mondihar files this report.
At the Foreign Ministry headquarters in Tehran on Monday, Iran's top diplomat Abbas Araghchi delivered a message of total strategic resolve, dismissing rumors of a secret outreach to the Trump administration. The foreign minister emphasized that Iran is not seeking a temporary pause in hostilities, but a definitive end to what he calls American and Israeli aggression. Araghchi claimed that 15 days into the conflict, it is the United States that is growing desperate, alleging that Washington has resorted to asking its own adversaries to mediate the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Araghchi framed the current conflict as a continuation of a year of unprecedented struggle, noting that the nation remains proud despite the martyrdom of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and hundreds of civilians and cadres.
و همونطور که بارها گفتیم دیشب هم با شبکه CBS آمریکا مجدد تکرار کردم هیچ پیامی ارسال نکردیم تقاضای آتش بس نداریم ولی این جنگ باید خاتمه پیدا بکنه به صورتی که دیگر تکرار نشود اینکه ما میگوییم آتش بس نمیخواهیم نه به این دلیل که دنبال جنگ هستیم، به این دلیل که این بار این جنگ باید به شکلی تمام بشود که دشمنان ما دیگر هرگز به فکر تکرار این حملات و این تجاوز نیفتند. و من فکر میکنم تا همین الان هم درس خوبی فرا گرفتند، فهمیدند که با چه ملتی طرف هستند که در دفاع از خودش هیچ تردیدی نمیکنه و آمادگی داره که جنگ رو تا هر کجا که هست ادامه بده و به هر کجا که هست بکشه.
The foreign minister's most pointed remarks were directed at the maritime blockade of the Persian Gulf. While President Trump has vowed that U.S. Navy escorts will reopen the Strait of Hormuz soon, Araghchi claimed that Washington is privately begging third-party nations, some of whom the U.S. considers enemies, to help negotiate a passage for American ships. He reiterated that while the strait remains open to friends, it will remain firmly closed to any nation collaborating with the U.S.-Israeli offensive.
15 روز که از جنگ گذشته برای امنیت تنگه هرمز متوسل میشن به کسانی که تا دیروز دشمن حساب میکردن. از کشورهای دیگه میخوان بیان کمک بکنن بهشون برای اینکه تنگه هرمز همچنان باز بمونه، که البته از نظر ما باز هست، فقط بسته است به روی دشمنان ما، به روی کسانی که به کشور ما تجاوز ناجوانمردانه را انجام دادن و متحدینشون.
The human cost of the 15-day war continues to climb. Iranian officials now report up to 1,450 dead, while the U.S. and Israel have admitted to a combined 26 military fatalities. Despite the disparity in casualties and the epic fury strikes on its navy, Tehran's diplomatic stance suggests that the new leadership under Mojtaba Khamenei is doubling down on a war of attrition. As global energy prices remain at historic highs, the lesson Araghchi claims the West has learned is still being written in the volatile waters of the Middle East. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been MJ Mondeha, SMNA News.
Trump has declared a major naval victory in the Persian Gulf, claiming U.S. forces have sunk more than 30 Iranian mine-laying vessels. The U.S. president asserted that Tehran's capacity to blockade global commerce is nearing zero, while simultaneously ramping up pressure on nations like Japan and China to join a maritime coalition to protect their own energy interests. This report from Almar Forsuelo.
At a lunch with board members of the Trump Kennedy Center on Monday, President Donald Trump painted a picture of a total maritime supremacy. After the devastating strikes on Karg Island last Friday, the president announced that the U.S. has effectively wiped out Iran's specialized mine-laying fleet, sending over 30 ships to the bottom of the sea, while Trump noted that he spared Iran's oil export infrastructure, referring to the facility's pipes as a concession for a future rebuilding of the country. He warned that this restraint could vanish in 5 minutes if the regime continues its defiance.
We are aggressively dismantling Iran's defense industrial base, and ability to rebuild its missiles and drone capability is getting down to close to zero. And we're hammering their capacity to threaten commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, with more than 30 mine-laying ships destroyed. We hit, to the best of our knowledge, all of their mine-laying ships. Now they can put them on other types of ships, I guess, and drop them in. But we don't know that any have even been dropped in. We're not sure that any have been. That's a big negative for them if they do it. It's a form of suicide. But we don't know that they have dropped any in. But we've hit all 30 of their ships and destroyed them. They're all at the bottom of the sea.
Despite the reported military success, Trump expressed growing frustration with global partners who rely on the Strait of Hormuz far more than the United States. He pointed out that while the U.S. is energy independent, nations like Japan, China, and South Korea receive the vast majority of their oil through the checkpoint. This follows his weekend ultimatum to NATO, where he suggested a very bad future for the alliance of member states do not contribute to the coalition of 7 currently being assembled to escort tankers through the waterway.
We strongly encourage other nations whose economies depend on the Strait far more than ours. We get less than 1% of our oil from the Strait, and some countries get much more. Japan gets 95%, China gets 90%, many of the Europeans get quite a bit, South Korea gets 35%. So we want them to come and help us with the Strait. We have it in very good shape.
The Iranian leadership, however, maintains that the blockade is a matter of sovereignty. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reiterated that the strait is closed to enemies and any who collaborate with them. With 20% of the world's daily oil supply hanging in the balance, the U.S. is moving to prove that Iran's grip of steel has been broken by force. As the president prepares to deploy naval escorts very soon, the question remains whether the remaining IRGC forces will attempt what Trump called a form of suicide by attacking the incoming U.S. fleet. Reporting for Newsline World, Almar Forsualo, SMNI News.
Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of U.S. Central Command, has declared that Operation Epic Fury is successfully dismantling Iran's military-industrial base. Carla Abellana reports.
16 days into the conflict, the United States Central Command has shifted from active defense to the total systemic dismantling of Iran's military infrastructure. Admiral Brad Cooper revealed on Monday that U.S. and partner forces have conducted over 6,000 combat flights, maintaining total air superiority. Cooper also revealed the destruction of over 100 Iranian naval vessels and multiple drone factories, even as President Donald Trump warns NATO allies of a very bad future if they failed to join a new maritime coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The admiral presented before and after satellite imagery showing the total destruction of naval drone storage facilities near the Strait of Hormuz and a major attack drone factory in Tehran. Last Friday, a large-scale strike on Karg Island reportedly wiped out 90 military targets, including storage bunkers for naval mines intended for the blockade.
We're also zeroed in on dismantling Iran's decades-old threat to the free flow of commerce through the Strait of Hormuz. Through a combination of air, land, and maritime capabilities, we have successfully destroyed over 100 Iranian naval vessels, and we aren't done. We will continue to rapidly deplete Iran's ability to threaten freedom of navigation in and around the Strait of Hormuz.
The military success comes amid a growing diplomatic rift within the West. On Sunday night, President Trump issued a blunt appeal to allies attempting to assemble a coalition of 7 to forcibly reopen the Strait of Hormuz. However, with key partners like the UK and France showing hesitation, the president warned that NATO's future is at stake if help is not forthcoming. The urgency follows what Admiral Cooper described as a reckless Iranian campaign of terror, claiming Tehran has launched over 300 attacks on 12 different countries in just 2 weeks, including the recent use of cluster bombs on civilian neighborhoods in Tel Aviv.
In just the last few days, the Iranian regime launched a reckless attack against civilian neighborhoods in Tel Aviv with cluster bombs, an inherently indiscriminate type of munition. We join countries across the region in condemning this aggression, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with our partners in bolstering our own defenses.
Despite the reported decimation of its fleet, Tehran remains defiant. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reiterated that while the strait handles 20% of global oil traffic, it will remain closed to any hostile countries cooperating with the U.S. With 50,000 U.S. personnel now deployed in what is being described as a 24/7 logistics masterpiece, the White House is betting that the lion's roar will eventually break the blockade, with or without its traditional European allies. Reporting for Newsline World, Carla Abellana, SMNI News.
Israel's defense forces have officially expanded their forward defense area into southern Lebanon, marking the start of ground operations to neutralize Hezbollah threats. At the United Nations, Israel's ambassador that the time for pretending diplomacy is working has ended, citing Beirut's inability to enforce security agreements as the catalyst for the escalation. This report. Overnight, the conflict in the Middle East reached a critical new phase as Israeli boots hit the ground in southern Lebanon. Ambassador Danny Danon confirmed the expansion of the forward defense area, asserting that the move is essential to dismantle immediate terrorist threats that the Lebanese government has failed to restrain despite multiple diplomatic commitments. Danon pointed to the flagrant violation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, noting that Hezbollah has continued to operate and fire rockets from south of the Litani River, an area that was supposed to be weapon-free under the November 2024 ceasefire.
Israel cannot sit back and pretend diplomacy is working. Since the ceasefire in November 2024, the Lebanese government has not done what it needed to do to dismantle Hezbollah. Lebanon must restrain Hezbollah now, or we will.
Turning his attention to Tehran, Danon dismissed recent claims by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi that Iran has avoided civilian targets. He listed the widespread destruction of homes, airports, and energy infrastructure across the Gulf as proof of the regime's disconnected from reality. The ambassador also highlighted growing cracks within the Iranian regime, questioning the whereabouts of the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who has yet to appear in public. Amid reports of security force defections, Danon warned that without this preemptive war, Iran's missile arsenal would have grown to rival major global powers by 2027.
Where is this new supreme leader? Where is he? He hasn't appeared in public. Leaders and members of the security forces are defecting. And while they hide, they continue to fire missiles from behind civilians like the cowards that they are. Israel will press forward until our objectives are achieved. Without action, Iran's surface-to-surface missile arsenal could have reached 8,000 missiles by 2027. That would rival the largest missile stockpiles held by major powers. Israel will not wait for that threat to materialize.
Regarding the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, Danon echoed President Trump's call for a global coalition. He warned European nations and other allies that hiding from the crisis will only bring the threat of terrorism to their own shores. When asked if the Israeli Navy would join the U.S. in the Persian Gulf, Danon refused to rule out any options, stating that a tiny nation is prepared to support its great friend in Washington. As IDF units push deeper into Lebanese territory, the diplomatic window in New York appears to have slammed shut. For Israel, the priority is no longer words on paper, but the physical removal of the death industry built along its northern and eastern borders. Moscow is hitting back after Ukraine imposed sanctions on 10 Russian Paralympic athletes, with Kremlin calling the move another example of Kiev's increasingly inexplicable decisions. Daniela Palite files this report.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky signed the sanctions on March 15th, targeting 48 companies from Russia and Iran, 130 individuals, and 10 Russian Paralympians, whom Kiev accuses of justifying Russian aggression and spreading propaganda. The move comes after Russian athletes competed under their national flag at the Milan Cortina Games, their first time doing so since 2014, after the International Paralympic Committee lifted its ban last September. But Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov dismissed the sanctions in typically dry fashion.
Вы знаете, наверное, нет смысла комментировать каждый шаг киевского режима, тем более, что большинство этих шагов зачастую не поддаются действия киевского режима, которые не способны бросить хоть какую-то тень на столь успешное выступление.
Peskov also addressed the stalled peace process, saying Trump has not lost interest in mediating between Moscow and Kiev, and that Russia is waiting for the next round of talks. He suggested the U.S. president's repeated calls on Zelensky to accept a deal signal where Washington sees the main obstacle.
Не терял, более того, он рекомендует, настоятельно рекомендует президенту Зеленскому пойти на сделку. И из этих заявлений следует, что именно украинская сторона является основным тормозом.
The most recent round of Russia-Ukraine-US talks took place February 17 and 18th. Both sides described the negotiations as tough but substantive, with no breakthrough announced. Reporting for Newsline World, Daniela Paulita, SMNI News.
Hundreds of protesters rallied in Seoul this week against the possibility of South Korea joining a U.S.-led mission to secure the Strait of Hormuz, denouncing the potential military involvement as an imperialist and colonial war of aggression. Paul Montibon has the story.
Large groups of protesters gathered in central Seoul this week to oppose the idea of South Korea joining a U.S.-led effort to secure the Strait of Hormuz amid the ongoing conflict involving Iran. Demonstrators held signs and chanted slogans condemning what they described as imperialist and colonial war aggression, saying Seoul should not contribute military support to a foreign conflict.
이란 미국과 이스라엘의 이란 전쟁은 제국주의적 식민주의적인 침략 전쟁입니다. 전쟁이 장기화돼서는 안 되고요. 한국군이 파병을 하게 되면 전쟁이 장기화되고 그 피해가 더 커지고 그 학살과 점령을 정당화하는 것이기 때문에 참 수가 없어서 이렇게 나왔습니다.
The protest took place outside the U.S. Embassy and other key areas of the capital, reflecting public unease and political debate over whether South Korea should commit forces or warships in support of international efforts to keep the strategic shipping route open. Many activists also expressed broader criticism of military involvement abroad and called for prioritizing peace and diplomacy.
일단 이런 미친놈 하는 생각이 들었고요. 지가 전쟁을 이렇게 막 마음대로 일으켜놓고 다른 나라를 끌어들여서 그 책임을 나누려고 하는 것, 책임은 전쟁을 일으킨 당사자들이 책임을 전혀 지지 않고 전쟁을 당하는 나라 그리고 다른 나라들을 끌어서 그 책임을 나누려고 하는 것에 부당하다고 생각을 합니다.
South Korean officials have so far not committed to sending troops or vessels, saying they are seeking national consensus and careful discussions before deciding how to respond to U.S. President Donald Trump's calls for allied support to protect the strait. Global attention remains focused on the Gulf region as diplomatic and military pressures continue to mount, with many nations weighing the implication of deeper involvement in the escalating conflict. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Paul Montibon, SMNI News.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is calling for greater regional integration, throwing his support behind Bolivia's bid to join the Mercosur trade bloc. Carlo de la Peña reports.
Brazilian President Lula da Silva is pushing for deeper Latin American integration. He made the remarks at the Palácio do Planalto in Brasilia during a state visit by Bolivian President Rodrigo Paz, using the occasion to push for expanded trade ties between the two neighbors. Lula noted that Brazil is already one of Bolivia's top trading partners and said that figure could grow significantly if both countries develop new productive sectors together. He also pointed to the business delegation accompanying Paz, saying private sector dialogue between the two countries is essential to driving bilateral trade forward. On Mercosur, Lula was unambiguous.
A adesão da Bolívia ao Mercosul representa passo histórico. O Mercosul se fortalece e nos dá mais autonomia estratégica diante das instabilidades do mercado global. Com a Bolívia, o Mercosul deixa de ser projeto restrito ao Cone Sul e passa a se consolidar como verdadeiro eixo de integração continental. Integração que ainda conta com instrumentos importantes como a CELAC.
Lula framed Bolivia's entry into the bloc as more than a trade matter, calling it a consolidation of continental cooperation and a boost to the region's strategic independence. He also announced he would attend the upcoming CELAC Africa Summit, where he said Latin America and African nations would deepen cooperation on sustainable development and environmental protection. Lula closed with a broader call to action, saying the future of Latin America hinges on the ability of its nations to work together across political differences. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
A senator is urging the Philippine government to cut spending amid Middle East tensions that are affecting commodity prices. Sheena Torn reports.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian suggested temporarily reducing official travel by government personnel. The goal is to help the government save on expenses. Gatchalian stressed the importance of cutting budget as the country's economy is at risk. This comes amid rising tensions in the Middle East, which are causing volatile global oil prices. In addition, Gatchalian said that the purchase of new government vehicles and equipment should be postponed, adding that this would help reduce the nation's spending. The senator also emphasized the need for the government to tighten its belt during the crisis. The proposal also includes saving electricity and energy in government offices. Gatchalian is also advocating carpooling and using virtual meetings as was done during the pandemic. These measures aim to help lower costs amid rising prices of oil, food, and transportation. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Sheena Torno, SMNI News.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. outlined the government's measure to ease the impact of rising oil prices caused by tensions in the Middle East. President Gatarong reports.
Mga kababayan,
in a video message, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. said his administration will provide financial assistance to different sectors. Starting today, March 17, the government, through the Department of Social Welfare and Development, distributed 5,000 pesos in cash relief to more than 139,000 tricycle drivers in Metro Manila. Tricycle drivers outside Metro Manila will receive assistance next. Jeepney and TNVS drivers will also receive 5,000 pesos each in the coming days. Meanwhile, the Department of Transportation will distribute the fuel subsidy in the last week of March. Marcos also said he fast-tracked 2 laws aimed at lowering taxes on petroleum and enabling the use of cheaper bioethanol.
Tuloy-tuloy din ang pagpapatupad ng Love Bus Program. Makakatulong po ito para makatipid sa pamasahe at gasolina ng taong bayan. Kaya't gamitin po ninyo ang libreng sakay sa Metro Cebu, Metro Davao at Metro Manila.
To ensure sufficient food supply, the Department of Agriculture will provide a 3,000 pesos fuel subsidy to more than 26,000 farmers. The Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources will also distribute a 3,000 pesos fuel subsidy to more than 26,000 fishermen starting March 19. In April, over 2,000 pesos in assistance will also be distributed to farmers and fishermen under the Presidential Assistance Program. The President also directed local governments to stop collecting pass-through fees from trucks transporting rice and agricultural products to prevent higher prices of goods. For airline passengers, the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines will reduce landing and parking fees. Meanwhile, the Civil Aeronautics Board has shortened the review period for fuel surcharges so that airfare can be lowered more quickly when jet fuel prices drop.
Ibig sabihin, kapag tumaas ang presyo ng jet fuel, mas kontrolado ang pagtaas ng airfare. At kapag bumaba naman ang presyo ng jet fuel, mas mabilis ding bababa ang pamasahe.
The President also reminded schools that no fees should be collected from students in public schools during graduation ceremonies. Starting March 25, the Department of Education will launch the DepEd Servicio Fair to bring government services and job opportunities closer to students and graduates. Marcos called for unity and cooperation to overcome the oil price crisis.
Mga kababayan, ngayon higit kailanman, kailangan natin ang pagtutulungan ng bawat isa. Walang iwanan, walang maiiwan sa pagharap natin sa hamong ito. Asahan ninyo ang patuloy namin paggawa ng mga hakbang upang maibsan ang mabigat na epekto ng kaganapan sa gitnang silangan sa taong bayan.
Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Crystalline Catarong, SMNI News.
A new digital platform is now available for overseas Filipino workers in distress, launched by the recruitment agency's crisis body as tension in the Middle East continue to escalate. Carla Abellana for more details.
The Recruitment Industry Crisis Coordination Council, or RICCC, soft-launched a digital crisis monitoring platform last Monday, March 16th. The platform is designed to track the condition of OFWs during emergencies abroad. The RICCC is composed of groups from the private recruitment industry, including the Philippine Association of Service Exporters Incorporated, or PASEI.
Kami yung nag-initiate na mabuo, lahat kami ng industriya ng nasa recruitment agency ng land base para ma-monitor namin ang ating mga OFW na nasa Middle East, especially in this time of Middle East conflict, no? So, gumawa kami nito sa tulong ng isang platform.
The RICCC partnered with Crisis Ops to launch what is called the SAFE platform. Through the system, OFWs can check into report whether they are safe. Recruitment agencies can immediately see the status of the workers they deployed and identify who may need urgent assistance or support. The recruitment industry says undocumented OFWs may also use the platform. The industry aims to eventually use the system for all types of crisis or threats in any country where Filipinos are working.
The initial actually is for this Middle East conflict. But eventually, we really want this platform to be like an extension for our monitoring for our OFW. As you know, we are obliged na to monitor our own.
Here is how OFWs can access the SAFE platform in just 6 steps. Step 1. Open an internet browser on your phone or computer. Step 2. Go to the website ricccc.crisisops.ai. Step 3. On the homepage, look for the safety check or check-in button. Step 4. Enter your name, location, recruitment agency, and contact details. Step 5. Select whether you are safe, need assistance, or are in an emergency. And Step 6. Press submit to send your status. Once the details are submitted, the monitoring team is immediately notified and will act to provide assistance to the OFW. Recruitment agencies will also coordinate with the Department of Migrant Workers for those who need to be repatriated.
Una, kami talaga ang makikipag-usap sa ating mga OFWs kung ano yung tulong na hinihingan nila. But if they want to be repatriated immediately, coordination namin. May coordination kami ginagawa at inilalapit natin sa ating gobyerno, lalo sa DMW.
For God in my beloved Philippines, Carla Abellana, SMNI News.
The Department of Foreign Affairs has firmly asserted the Philippines' long-standing sovereignty over Bajo de Masinloc and Kalayaan Island Group, pushing back against a statement from the Chinese embassy in Manila that questioned the country's territorial position. Ana Jane Sancho reports.
The Department of Foreign Affairs says the historical and legal basis for Philippine sovereignty over Bajo de Masinloc is clear. The agency cited the Murillo Velarde map of 1734, which shows the shoal as part of Philippine territory. The Philippines has also long exercised jurisdiction over the area through hydrographic surveys, official government communications, and its use as a training range by the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The Department of Foreign Affairs flatly rejected China's claim of indisputable sovereignty over the entire South China Sea.
The Philippines flatly rejects China's assertion of indisputable sovereignty over the entire South China Sea. This claim has no basis in fact, no basis in history, and no basis in international law. Full stop.
Meanwhile, the Chinese embassy in Manila posted on social media A 1990 letter from then Philippine Ambassador Bienvenido A. Tan Jr., presenting it as supposed proof that the Philippines does not hold sovereignty over Scarborough Shoal. The Chinese embassy said the document contradicts statements made by the Philippine officials regarding ownership of the shoal. But Rear Admiral J. Tariala, Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, pushed back, saying China has misread the document. Tariala explained that the letter was not an official renunciation of Philippine sovereignty. He said the communication only noted that the shoal falls outside the colonial boundaries set by the Treaty of Paris of 1898, but remains well within the Philippines' 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Tariala added that the letter was simply a private communication and can't be treated as an official government position. Despite the exchange of statements, the Philippine government maintained the country will hold firm in defending its sovereignty and rights in the West Philippine Sea, while continuing to pursue peaceful resolution of disputes through diplomacy. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, this has been Hannah Jane Sancho, SM9 News.
Donald Trump defended recent U.S. actions amid rising tensions with Iran, saying the moves were necessary to prevent greater threats and would ultimately lead to a much safer world. He also called NATO's response to securing the Strait of Hormuz disappointing, urging allies to do more and warning that reliance on the U.S. alone is not enough to maintain regional security. Joy Tabanaw is back for more news.
President Donald Trump said recent actions taken by the United States were necessary to ensure global security, despite concerns about economic impacts and rising tensions. Trump said the move was part of an obligation to prevent greater threats, warning that allowing adversaries to gain nuclear capabilities would pose far greater risks.
But it'll be soon, won't be long. And we're going to have a much safer world when it's wrapped up. It'll be wrapped up soon. We're going to have a much safer world. I had an obligation to do this. I didn't want to, I call it an excursion. I didn't want to make this journey.
He acknowledged that markets and fuel prices could be affected by the situation, but described the potential economic impact as a very small price to pay compared to a danger of nuclear conflict.
We had the highest stock market in history. We had low gas prices. Everything was good, and I know exactly. I know what you're going to do it. And people are going to raise the price of oil. That's good, but I know that. But that's a very small thing compared to allowing them to have. You want to see a stock market go down? Start letting them hit you with nukes. I thought it was going to go down much more, if you want to know the truth. I assumed that it was going to go down much more, only because people don't understand.
Trump characterized the geopolitical situation as a high-level chess game, saying world leaders involved in the conflict are highly strategic and intelligent players navigating complex international dynamics. The U.S. president also criticized NATO allies, lies on Sunday, for failing to provide assistance in securing the Strait of Hormuz, describing the response as disappointing. Trump said countries benefiting from the vital oil shipping route should contribute more to ensure its safety amid escalating tensions with Iran. He stressed that they shouldn't only be thanking us, they should be helping us, highlighting what he called a lack of commitment from key allies.
Well, they should be thanking me because many of them get 90%. China, as an example, should be thanking us, but I don't expect to thank you, but they should be thanking us. Japan gets 95%, China 91%. Many of the countries, South Korea gets a tremendous percentage of their oil and therefore their energy from the straits, or as they call it, the strait. They should be not only thanking us, they should be helping us. What does surprise me is that they're not eager to help. There are a couple. We'll be announcing some names soon. There are some.
Several European NATO members, including Germany, France, and the UK, have so far declined to send warships, favoring diplomatic approaches and cautioning against military involvement far from their territories.
But there are some countries that greatly disappointed me. And I'm the one that got them to pay from 2% to 5% of GDP, NATO. And I get along great with those countries in NATO, but I always said, the problem with NATO is We'll always be there for them, but they'll never be there for us. And we spend trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO to defend other countries. And I always said, but if it ever comes time to defend us, they're not going to be there. Many of them would not be there. And we're going to have to start thinking more wisely in this country. If some of these countries that we've been good to for years, and maybe more important than that, some of these countries that get 90% and 95% of their energy from Hormuz, the Strait.
Trump warned the continued reluctance from allies could jeopardize NATO's credibility and weaken collective defense as the U.S. urges more proactive measures to protect global energy routes amid the Middle East crisis. This has been Joy Tabanao, your global citizen correspondent reporting for Newsline World.
3 individuals with alleged ties to the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters and Dawla Islamiyah have voluntarily surrendered to authorities in Mamasapano, Maguindanao del Sur, turning over high-caliber firearms along with themselves. Prince Tripoli for the details.
3 individuals with alleged ties to the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters and Dawla Islamiyah surrendered to the National Bureau of Investigation on March 14 with the assistance of operatives from the NBI Bangsamoro region. The agency says debriefing and investigation of the surrenderees are ongoing.
In fact, yung pagsuko nila together with the firearms na gamit-gamit nila doon sa pagiging member nila nitong DI, yung Islamiyah na supporter ng ISIS at ng BFF, no?
These surrenderees reportedly requested a discreet and secure extraction by authorities out of fear that former associates might retaliate against them. Among the weapons turned over, a 50 caliber Barrett rifle, an M79 grenade launcher, an M203 grenade launcher tube, a Russian Mosin rifle, and assorted ammunition.
Well, yung Rido kasi, iba-ibang reason, may politika, may alabanan ng ari-arian. So that is something that is confined sa kanila na napanyan. So we cannot discount lahat yan, may mga possibilities, no? So siguro doon sa reintegration nila at sa debriefing, mas marami pang lalabas na mga kwento at storya.
The NBI says the 3 will undergo a reintegration program. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Prince Tripoli, SMN News.
A buy-bus operation in Zamboanga City has led to the arrest of a man and the seizure of over 6.8 million pesos worth of suspected shabu in a joint operation by the PNP Special Action Force and the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency. This report. The Philippine National Police says the operation was conducted in Barangay Zone 4, Zamboanga City on the night of March 14th. Recovered from the suspect approximately 1,000 grams of suspected shabu, valued at 6.8 million pesos. The operation was led by the PNP Special Action Force, together with the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency and other police units. Aside from the drugs, authorities also seized a white vehicle, buy-bus money, and other evidence from the transaction. The suspect and all evidence are now in the custody of the PDEA for the filing of appropriate charges. PNP Chief Jose Melencio Nartates Jr. stressed that the agency will continue its crackdown on illegal drugs in the interest of community safety, calling the operation part of a broader effort to strengthen the force's anti-criminality campaign. A group of former Philippine soldiers known as the Brave 18 is laying out in detail how billions of pesos were allegedly funneled to politicians through a cash delivery system using suitcases, vans, and even congressional helipad. Jay Tabanao has the story.
In an exclusive interview with online journalist known as the Banateros, the group, former soldiers and security personnel of businessman Zaldico, pushed back hard against claims that moving billions in cash by suitcase over 5 years was impossible. According to the group, cause so-called account executives or EAs were the only ones who knew the exact amounts being moved. The soldiers say they serve only as drivers and bodyguards.
Ang sistema kasi sir, ang sabi nung sa balita, paano bilangin yon? binibilang sa machine. Pero sa pagbilang ng mga EA na nakikita namin, naka-bundle na yan, sir. 1 million, 20 million. Ganun na yung bilangan, sir, hindi na sa machine.
The group identified Horizon Homes and a townhouse at the Manila Polo Club as staging areas where cash was loaded into vans and coasters before being dispatched to recipients. They also alleged that a helipad inside the congressional compound was used to smuggle paper bags containing 5 to 10 million pesos each, delivered to members of the so-called Quad Committee during hearings. While the group confirmed that money was flowing into the House of Representatives, they admitted they could not say with certainty whether it was directly tied to the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte.
So sa madaling salita, parang hindi nyo naman alam kung para saan yun.
Kasi confidential yung ginagawa nila sa mga ganyan eh. Si Mark at Paul na yan ang may alam ko dyan.
The former soldiers also admitted they initially had no idea their work was illegal until flood control anomalies exploded into public view and the dots began to connect.
Tapos isa pa dun, sir, yung ano dito, sir, yung pumutok na po yung flood control. Yung pumutok na flood control, doon na namin unti-unting naintindihan na galing pala doon yung pera. Hindi pala sa negosyo, hindi lang pala sa negosyo ni boss.
The revelations have left the group furious, watching senators, congressmen, and government officials publicly brand them as liars, while they say those same officials received the cash deliveries firsthand.
Naiinis, sir.
Naiinis?
Kasi parang kami pa yung lumalabas na mali at sinungaling. Hindi naman po namin sasabihin yun kung halimbawa ko lang po, sir, no, ordinaryong mamamayan lang po ako, paano ko po malaman yung bahay niya kung hindi ako napunta doon?
Sir, isa lang masasabi ko, don't shoot the messenger.
With death threats now targeting their families, the Brave 18 say they are not backing down.
Para sa amin tong tropa na to, sir, kung anong naumpisahan namin, hanggang dulo na ito, wala nang iwanan. Tatapusin na namin kung sana nga matuldukan na to eh. Kasi naumpisa na namin to. Hanggang dulo na ito.
Joy Tabanao, your citizen correspondent reporting for Newsline World.
A former Arroyo administration official is hitting back against attempts to drag former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo into the controversy surrounding 18 ex-Marines, calling it a move to shift attention away from alleged massive corruption. MJ Mondihar tells us more.
A former presidential advisor in political affairs recently dragged former Philippine President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo into the issue. This is related to the exposure of 18 former soldiers who were former security aides of the controversial former Congressman Zaldi Co. It was claimed that the people behind the exposure of those former soldiers were allegedly allies of former President GMA.
Una sa lahat, alam mo si Secretary Ronald Llamas, kaibigan ko yan. And alam ko na alam niya na napakasama ng korupsyon na nangyari. At alam ko rin na ang ginagawa niya ay ilihis yung sitwasyon o yung issue sa parang usaping politika. Pero hindi yun ang problema eh. Ang problema natin ay yung korupsyon na nangyayari sa ating bansa.
This was the response of Mike Defensor, one of those referred to by Llamas. Defensor previously served as Presidential Chief of Staff, Housing Secretary, and Environment Secretary under the Arroyo government. He also pushed back on the logic using the photos of GMA with President Marcos as proof of alliance.
Maraming litrato rin naman si Speaker GMA with President Bongbong Marcos. Ang ibig sabihin ba nun, kakampi niya na o tinotolerate niya yung nangyayaring sitwasyon sa ngayon o yung korupsyon dito sa ating bansa? Hindi naman din ibig sabihin niya yun. Siya ay kinatawan ng kanyang distrito.
Defensor also described the argument against GMA as shallow, noting that Arroyo and Vice President Sara Duterte were recently seen together in Davao City. And does this mean that the Vice President is also linked to the ex-18 Marines?
Pag siya'y nakipag-usap kay Speaker Boji D, nakipag-usap kay VP Inday Sara, walang ibig sabihin lahat yan. Kasama yung parte bilang trabaho niya, bilang kinatawan ng kanyang distrito.
Defensor also urged the public not to be misled by attempts to divert attention away from corruption issues. According to him, someone must be held accountable for the alleged flood control anomaly which involves trillions of pesos from public funds.
Ang issue dito May korupsyon tayong nakita na yung mga problema sa ghost projects. Hanggang ngayon, sinasabi nila si Saldico ang mastermind at maraming dinideliver na pera according to Sergeant Gotesa at according to the 18 Marines. Yan ang issue na kailangan nating sagutin.
Reporting for Newsline World, this has been MJ Mondihat, SMNI News.
The song Golden from the film K-pop Demon Hunters made history at the Academy Awards on Sunday night after winning Best Original Song, becoming the first K-pop track to ever receive the honor. Meanwhile, actor Timothée Chalamet was left disappointed after missing out on the Best Actor award at the Academy Awards, despite being widely tipped to win for his performance in Marty Supreme. Andrea Santos for the updates.
The song Golden from the film K-pop Demon Hunters has won the Best Original Song Award at the Academy Awards on Sunday night. The track was written by EJ, Mark Sonnenblick, Jonghyuk Kwak, Yuhan Lee, Hee Dong-nam, Jong Hoon-sun, and Teddy Park, marking their first Oscar nomination and win for all 7 songwriters. The victory also marks a historic milestone as Golden became the first K-pop song to ever win in the Best Original Song category at the Oscars. The songwriters behind the hit track Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters were cut off while delivering their acceptance speech at the Academy Awards on Sunday night. The composers were still speaking when the show's music began playing, signaling them to wrap up the remarks and leave the stage. Despite the abrupt moment, the award winners later continued and completed their message while speaking with members of the media in the press room after the ceremony. Actor Timothée Chalamet reportedly struggled to maintain his confident persona after missing out on the Best Actor award at the Academy Awards. Heading into the ceremony, the 30-year-old star had been widely considered a strong favorite to take home the trophy for his leading role in the film Marty Supreme. Despite the anticipation surrounding his performance, the award ultimately went to another nominee, leaving fans and industry watchers surprised by the outcome. Chalamet's performance in Marty Supreme had received widespread praise throughout the awards season, with many critics highlighting his portrayal as one of the standout performances of the year. And that's all for now. I'm Andrea Santos bringing you the latest showbuzz.
In the latest sports update, Kylian Mbappe returns for Real Madrid against Manchester City, while Jude Bellingham will miss the match due to injury. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark impressed in her first start for United States basketball team after leading a dominant over New Zealand women's national basketball team in the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup 2026 qualifying tournament. Carlo De La Peña reports.
Kylian Mbappe is back. Real Madrid head coach Alvaro Arbeloa confirmed that Mbappe recovered from a left knee sprain sustained earlier this month and will be available for the crucial match in Manchester. The French international had been sidelined since Real's La Liga clash against CA Osasuna on February 21. Meanwhile, Bellingham will not feature in the match after suffering a hamstring injury less than 10 minutes into Real's league game against Rayo Vallecano on February 1. Initial estimates suggested the England international would miss around 4 weeks, but the injury turned out to be more serious than first expected. Despite being ruled out, the 22-year-old midfielder traveled with the squad to support his teammates and continue light training as he works toward full recovery. Real Madrid head into the second leg with a commanding advantage after a 3-0 victory in the first meeting at the Santiago Bernabeu, where midfielder Federico Valverde delivered a first-half hat-trick. The Spanish side could have extended their lead further, but Manchester City goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma denied a penalty from Vinicius Jr. early in the second half. Meanwhile, Team USA delivered a dominant performance to secure a 101-46 victory, marking its second largest win in the tournament. Clark finished with 14 points and 6 off 11 shooting, along with 6 assists and 2 steals in her first start for the national team. The Indiana Fever guard has been a major contributor for the unbeaten Americans, leading the team with 51 points, 25 assists, and a plus-minus rating of +104 through 4 games. Team USA improved to a 4-0 record and will wrap up the qualifying tournament against Spain women's national basketball team as they continue preparations for the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup 2026 in Berlin, Germany. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Carlo de la Peña bringing you the latest sports news.
And before we end, may be inspired with the words of the sun. Start strong, finish strong. Quitting is not an option. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Franco Baranda. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.